All right, everybody, we're going to go on and get started. Thank y'all for being here today on our third installment on our Office 365 series. Whether you're a longtime client of ours or this is your first time interacting with us, we're so glad that you're here today. We did want to apologize and just thank everyone again for being understanding last week. We are so sorry for any inconvenience that it caused. We learned a lot from that error, and we will not be making that mistake again. So once again, we appreciate y'all's patience as we navigated that, and hopefully this date and time works for you. If not, we will be reporting it for those of you who can watch it at a later date. I am Ellie Snyder, the Director of Marketing Automation here at Enable, and we absolutely love helping churches with their technology. It is our passion, our purpose, and it's why we do what we do. So we hope today that we can help you out with some tools that can help you in your ministry, specifically with Office 365. So we'll be looking at the collaboration features, that's what we've been calling them, in regards to the E1 license level of Office 365. It is available at no cost to any nonprofit 501c3 organization. So that's great. That's great news for you guys. A lot of people start their knowledge of their knowledge of Office 365 thinking it's just email, maybe calendar, maybe you have the Outlook app, and maybe you just think it does contacts, but it can do a lot more than that. So again, we're going to dive into those features today. And we do have 2 other webinars. Like I said, this is our third. So go back and listen to those. We did an overview webinar as well as a focus on the productivity features. So get in there, watch those. It's a great 45 minutes or so with great content from our team. So a couple of items before we begin. You can pause, rewind the webinar at any point. Just use the icons in the bottom left of your screen. If you joined anonymously, please put your name in the Q&A for us to know that you were here. And also in that Q&A box, feel free to write your questions throughout the webinar. We're going to take note of those, respond to you that we got them, and hopefully get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar. So I wanted to introduce our speakers to you guys. James Grissom is a senior engineer here at Enable. He's been with us for a couple years. He has a lot of history and background helping churches with their technology. So we're going to learn a lot from him today. And he's the rollout guy when it comes to the 3 things we're talking about today: OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. So he's our go-to. So we're going to learn a lot. The last thing I wanted to do was go over what we're going to do today. We're going to do a deep dive into those 3 features: Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. James will be doing a live demo of these tools and applying them with practical applications in a church setting. And then we'll have time for Q&A. And then just a reminder again, go watch those previous webinars whenever you get the chance. And from here, James, I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, thanks, Ellie. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you for the understanding from our little faux pas last time. I'm actually going to show you what went wrong later so that you can learn from our mistake. As we dive into this, we're going to cover 3 main tools that churches ask about all the time. They're being shoved in your face by Microsoft. Teams, you're seeing a lot. It's popping up whether you asked it to or not. OneDrive is something that a lot of people are familiar with. SharePoint, maybe less so. So just to set some broad definitions, when we're talking about Teams, what I'd like everybody to understand it as is a collaboration dashboard. It is a place where you can use all of the other tools, and it is a place where you can have conversations. And so it's the meeting place. It's the hub for all of the other collaboration. OneDrive is cloud storage similar to Dropbox or Google Drive, and it's where you should store all the files that affect you. We call them the me files. And then SharePoint, even though it's capable of a lot more, what most people are using it for is a storage platform for those we files that affect department and ministry related data instead of just me. So the way that I like to think about it is I'm going to store it in OneDrive if my role can continue without those files. If my job at the church can continue without those files, I'm going to put it in OneDrive. If it can't, I'm going to put it in SharePoint. So that's the very basic definition breakdown of these 3 tools that we're going to be using. So just a reminder, and please keep this in mind with any of these, when it comes to using these tools, you're going to open up the door for a lot of different ways to communicate, to share, to collaborate, to do things. It's very important that you set standards and policies for your church that say which tool is used for which action, for which use case. So it's imperative that you start with a plan. You create a structure that works for your individual environment and ministry goals, and make sure that your staff is aware of how to use those tools in a way that drives your ministry forward. Also, there are a lot of options out there now between SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, all the other goodies that Office throws in there, Office 365. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. There's lots of things that will be capable of, but that doesn't mean it's the best fit. So again, we encourage you to start considering this and every other technology related solution. Does this help you reach your ministry goals, and does it do so in a way that stays compliant with your standards? That's extremely important. Start with a plan and follow out with a plan, because what we've seen, if you just dive in without going in with a plan, adoption is pretty flimsy and you end up with stuff all over the place, and it's really hard to get back on track from that point. It's possible, but it's hard. So start with a plan and roll from that point forward, and you'll be a lot happier with implementing these tools. So moving on from here, I'm going to start with a demo and just show you guys some of the things that it's capable of based on some lessons learned, based on some questions that we've gotten when we've rolled this out in various churches. And so I'm going to change what I'm sharing here for just a moment. And give me 1 second, please.
While James is figuring that out, just a reminder to put your questions on the far right side where the Q&A is, and we'll get to those at the end.
Thanks, Ellie. All right, so now everybody should see my screen. You see that, Ellie?
I do, yes.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so again, as Ellie said, the apps that we're talking about are all value add products for the E1 subscription, which is no cost to nonprofits. And there are things that we can do with these products with the installable desktop applications that do cost extra, but all of the things I'm going to show you can be done without needing those products. So all of this can be done right now, whether you're paying extra or not. So these products individually are perfectly great. They're better together. So when you start using these tools together to achieve their various purposes, and you are partitioning them to individual use cases, you'll see a definite increase in productivity, and people, I think, will get a lot more out of it if you use each of them for their intended purpose. I say that because some people say, well, OneDrive stores files, so therefore we're going to put all files in OneDrive. And that's great until someone leaves your organization or has an extended illness, or somebody deletes files in there. Those files are only accessible for 92 days unless you're doing a third-party backup. And then after that, they're gone forever. SharePoint, on the other hand, only administrators can permanently delete that stuff, and so it's easier to keep up with. So it's better to use these products together. And so with Teams, Teams can do tons of things. As I mentioned earlier, Teams is capable of all of the things that you were doing in Skype for Business and meetings and a lot more. So being able to use all these both separately and together is going to be a great experience for you. So all that said, let's drop in and take a look. The launchpad for everything that we're going to do in Office 365 is going to office.com and logging in. There's a lot of links out there that work. There's portal.office, login.office. Now www.office.com is a perfectly fine way to get here. It's going to ask for your organization email and password and then show you this dashboard. And when you're here, it shows you all of the apps that are available to you. So right now we're going to click on OneDrive to start. So when I come here, just like you're used to with Dropbox or Finder or Windows Explorer, you see a list of folders and a list of files. And with those files and folders, you have a lot of actions that you're capable of doing. You can create new folders. You can start with creating a new Word document, Excel document, all those things. If you have E1 and you open these in the online tool, it's just going to work right there in your browser. You don't have to pay for the apps to use those. You can also upload any file you want. Basically, there are some restrictions, but for your day-to-day use case, just about anything you want to upload, you can store there, just like you would do in Dropbox or G Drive or iCloud. Once you have things created in here and you have things moved over, it's pretty easy to work with. So say I have something on my desktop and I just want to add that to here. So if I browse to my desktop and I say I need this document in my OneDrive, it's going to tell me uploading it, 2 documents, it's complete, and now it's available for me right here, exactly where I put it when I saved it. One thing that you will notice is that when you do that, when you have a new item in any folder, you're going to see these little sun flares, and that means that's a new item. All right, so now that we've done that, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and show you what it means and how you're going to use this within SharePoint. So if I click on the 3 dots here in between the file name and the modified date, and I say move to or copy to, I can move that file to any of the SharePoint sites that I have access to. So right here we have this site called the Sharing Church. I have an adult ministry folder, and so I want to put that file there. So now if I go back over here to my app launcher and I click on SharePoint, and then I open that Sharing Church site, the way this is laid out is by departments. And so when I click on my adult ministry link, I'm going to be taken to what looks an awful lot like what we just saw in OneDrive. And the reason that is because it's the exact same backend. So that's one thing that's that needs to be understood, that the way that you interact with files and folders is exactly the same between OneDrive and SharePoint. And really the distinction is, does it affect me only, or is it for the ministry that I work in? So is this my my tax return documents, or is this the VBS roll sheet? So if it's the VBS roll sheet, I want to put it over in my ministry folder instead of in my OneDrive, so that if I am extended away, somebody else can take care of that for me. So once I have any of these, either in SharePoint or OneDrive, everything that I'm going to do to interact with the files, as I said, is exactly the same. So if I am working with a new document, or a saved document. So I have my awesome document right here. If I click on that from within OneDrive or SharePoint, it opens automatically in Word Online. So it tells me some things that I've done, and it opens where I left off. And one thing that you'll notice here is that there is no save button. And that's because every time you make any edits, it immediately up here by My Awesome Doc, it says saving. Every time you make an edit, it saves those changes immediately. And so now it's saved. So if I'm working on this and I decide, you know what, I really want someone to help me out with this, I'm going to say share. And I want to talk a little bit about these different ways to share. So the default, when you click on share, if you haven't changed anything in your organization, is anyone with the link. Anyone with the link is exactly what it sounds like. If I send this to Ellie and Ellie forwards this to her husband, all three of us can now edit this document because I have this checkbox that says allow editing. They can forward it to as many people as they want, and they will also be allowed to edit it. One good thing is every time they do forward that link, by default, the system will email you and says, hey, an edit link was forwarded from this person to that person, so that hopefully you won't just forget it's out there. But if they're not forwarding it and you don't want someone to have access to it forever, then we highly recommend that anyone links have an expiration date. You could also set a secondary password that you email out to people after you email them the link to make it a little safer if you needed to. So there's a safety aspect there, but there's also just a content control access. One great reason that you would do this with an anyone link with an expiration is if you update your volunteer roster for who's serving in the children's department. You update that every Friday so that people know their assignments. You don't want people accidentally using the wrong assignment list. So you might expire that every time you share it. You're going to expire it every week so that you know that people aren't opening the wrong document. Another great thing to do there is uncheck that allow editing. This is just something that I want people to be aware of the knowledge, not that I want them to make changes to. So that's the anyone link. That's why you have a checkbox to allow or not allow editing, and that's the use cases for the expiration. If I chose instead people in enable, yours would say people in my church with the link, then they can forward that within our organization, but not to anybody outside, and it will work for anybody inside. If I choose specific people, it's only the people I email it to. And if I choose people with existing access, this is basically giving them a shortcut. You already have access to this. I'm not going to make you go dig to find it. Please click on this link and help me with this document. So we talked about how OneDrive is for my stuff and SharePoint is for our stuff. So why would you share in OneDrive? Well, if the document only affects you right now, you still might want collaboration on it until you put it in the department and say, okay, this is the final draft. I've worked this out with Tom and Susie, and this is exactly how we want it. So now I'm going to move it to the SharePoint side, and this is the final version. The copy that I leave on my side, I might rename draft just so I can keep them separate in my mind. So that's why you would share from OneDrive. Sharing from SharePoint. If I work in a ministry, if I work in the children's ministry or the adult ministry, I don't have to share content with other staff members who work in that ministry or the finance department. I don't have to share with people if they belong to my same ministry for them to be able to access it, because they already have rights, because that's built for a team and all of those team members already have access. But if I'm coordinating with someone outside of the department and I don't want them to be able to make changes to all of my stuff, but I do want them to be able to make changes to this one particular document, then I would share with people inside of my organization out of my SharePoint folder so that we don't have to do it separately or do it elsewhere. So you don't have to share with people that belong to your team, but for people outside of your team, if you only want them to have access to a particular folder or a particular document, that's why you would share within SharePoint. And then again, that people with existing access is just a really polite and friendly way to say, hey, remember this thing we were working on? Please open it and take a look at paragraph 3. So if I share this document, and I'm going to do specific people, and I'm going to allow editing. And if I choose to share this with Ellie, she receives an email that says, James Grissom has shared this with you, and now you are free to collaborate. So if Ellie opens that up, you will see that she is able to communicate in real time on this document exactly like you would see in Google Docs. So this works with any of the online applications, and if you both have access to the desktop applications, it will also work with the installed Word or the installed Excel, etc. And so now you see Ellie popped on there and she's typing live, and that's not me, that's Ellie. So it saved her changes. And now if we close this, and also you see her up here, it says Ellie Snyder is helping edit. So really nice, lets you know who all's doing what. All right, so I was working on this with Ellie, and now you see the modified date on my awesome doc says a few seconds ago, and Ellie's the one that made some changes. So that's how you can keep track of what's happening and make sure that only the people who should be making changes are. If I choose the dot next to the folder or the item, or if I click the three dots in between, I get the same menu items. If I choose it with the selector dot right here, the actions I can do are across the top. If I click the three dots, they're right here. One of the things that I want to show you with this is version history. Because I'm collaborating, and because I'm working on this with another person, I want to be able to look at previous versions of this document, because maybe Ellie typed it in a way that isn't perfect for the final product, and I need to go back. So the way previous versions works is if I click the three dots here in between, I can restore an older version, or I can open it to take a look. So I'm going to open the version that happened before Ellie started collaborating with me. And that's going to show me what it looked like before she worked with me. So here it is, and this is everything happening. Now I have previous version. It's telling me, do you want to compare what it looks like on this version versus the current version? So if I click compare, now I can see all of the different versions that we've had, and Ellie's changes are highlighted. So that's a really useful tool for going back and making sure that now that we're collaborating, I want to make sure that I have some quality control in place just in case it's not what I wanted. So now that I've compared all those versions, I can say, you know what, I like this version better. So I'm going to click restore, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? This is a permanent change. I'm going to say yes. All right. So now that I've done that, when I open it, it's going to be the version that I chose to use. So now that I've done that, Ellie's coordinated with me. We've got it the way we want. If I click on details, it's going to tell me right here who has access, and it's going to tell me the activity of that. So I'm going to click on manage access, and I'm going to say, thanks for your help, Ellie, but I don't need that anymore. So I'm going to remove that copy of the share, and now only I have access again. Or if this were in a team, if this were in my VBS folder, anybody who had access to VBS would have that. So as I said before, OneDrive, SharePoint, the sharing mechanisms, the version history mechanisms, the activity, all exactly the same because they have the same backend. So it's a good reminder that when you're using either of these tools, it's very familiar because they act the same. Here in just a bit, we'll talk about how to do that when you are working on it with your desktop apps. But one quick thing I want to point out, if I share this with someone outside of the organization that doesn't have an E1 license, they will see exactly this. They're using my tenant information, not their subscription, in order to access this document. Because I shared it with them, they can edit online as if they had a subscription to Office 365, even if they don't. They're accessing this because I shared it with them from my side. And so just like you would be able to share it with a volunteer from the church's side, and they can go in and edit if you chose to allow them to edit, whether they have Office or not. Okay, so let's talk about sync for just 1 second. Sync is going to make it easy for you to interact with these items from your desktop, whether you're on a Mac or PC, without having to use a web browser to interact with your files. So if I am on a SharePoint site that I don't currently have synchronizing on my computer, you'll see here that across the top, I see a sync button. So the OneDrive for Business Sync client is a short, very small installer that is free with your E1 subscription, and it enables you to keep a copy of what's in the cloud on your desktop. Two very important things with that are, if you click on settings once you have it installed, and then settings again, files on demand. Files on demand is familiar to you if you're using Dropbox and a couple others. It means that until I actually interact with a document, it's not going to download a copy to my computer. It's going to basically make an index that points to files available to me in the current folder I'm working with. Another thing on Windows computers is you can, just like you do on Mac with iCloud backups, you can choose to automatically back up your desktop, pictures, and documents folders within OneDrive, which is a great value add extra safety mechanism to protect your documents. And Mac has some workarounds to make the similar thing happen. They're still working on it. Right now, Mac and Apple and Microsoft are playing nicer together than they ever have, but there's still some things that are on the roadmap, and that's one of them, to get that built into our Mac settings as well. We have been working with other ways around that problem, so that's something that we could give you some pointers if you need similar functionality. So once you have files on demand enabled, you can synchronize your entire church's library if you want to, because if I see this little cloud icon, that means it's just available to me. I don't actually have a copy on my computer. So when I open any of these, this document is not on my computer until I open it. When I open it, you will see now that the icon has changed. If it's the open circle, it means that there happens to be a copy. If I right click on this and say, you know what, I don't want this copy on here and do free up space, it goes away and it goes back to the cloud. If I say, you know what, if I'm on an airplane, I need to work on this, and so I don't want this to ever not be on my computer, so I'm gonna click always keep on this device. The way that works is when your computer starts running out of space, OneDrive is automatically going to start pushing back to the cloud some of those, the least accessed of these files that have the open checkmark. It's not deleting them, it's just getting rid of the local copy to free up space so that it's not taking up room on your computer. All right, so now back in SharePoint, I want a copy of this. So I'm gonna click sync. It's going to say, hey, OneDrive can do that. Do you want OneDrive too? And I'm going to say, yeah, open that link. And again, because the OneDrive and SharePoint have the same backend, the OneDrive sync tool is the same tool that synchronizes SharePoint data and my personal OneDrive data. So now you'll see under my organization, you see the Sharing Church Adult Ministry folder, and there is all of the stuff that's online. And right now it's got the little cloud icon because I haven't actually downloaded any of it to my computer yet. It's just available for me from my computer. So anywhere I have access to the internet, I see and can download on demand anything that I need to work with. Files on demand is available on both Mac and PC. It's just the backup feature that's not. One caveat to that, Mac has to be on Mojave for that to work. So keep that in mind during your rollout. If you're going to start syncing, which is a lot easier, because now all I have to do is open my File Explorer, open my Finder in Mac, and there's all my stuff that's online. So it makes it a lot easier to interact with. All right, so that's the basics of OneDrive and SharePoint. Getting started in it isn't that hard. Using it is pretty simple. But again, the most important thing is that as an organization, as a church, you plan out what belongs where and help define the policies and procedures for what is stored where and who has access to it, and start with a good plan, and then you will be able to get good adoption and be able to use it successfully to replace an on-site file server. We have tons of churches now that don't have on-site file servers at all. They're using SharePoint and OneDrive to replace that functionality. The great thing about that is now anywhere in the world that I go to with internet access, I have everything in my organization open to me. And if I'm going to be in an area without internet, all I have to do is synchronize it. So really great way to replace needing to buy expensive hardware. And because it's a, no cost to you offering from Microsoft, the value skyrockets. So that covers SharePoint and OneDrive and Sync. What I'd like to spend a decent chunk more time in right now is Teams, because that's where most people right now are having the most questions. So without further ado, one thing I do want to point out is that you can run Teams in a browser. If I launch Teams here, it's always going to tell me, hey, you might get better features if you install the app. The app is free. It's being pushed out to Windows computers by default these days. And so there's no reason not to install it and use that. But if you're on a public computer and you just need access to something quickly, it is available. About 90–95% of what you can do in the full application is available in the online version. So just wanted to point that out. It is available here. But I'm going to spend the bulk of what I show you in the thick application, because that's going to be the premium experience. So if I open Teams, you'll see here, this is the meeting going on. There's our lovely marketing ladies who are helping drive this forward. And if I click on chat, this is where most people are going to start. Chat is going to be exactly what you were used to in Skype for Business, or for those of you who remember AIM, maybe I'm dating myself there, Facebook Messenger. It's got a lot of the same similar functionality. So if I'm chatting with Ellie, I'm like, hi, and we go back and forth. There are GIFs available. I want that. Okay. And anything that you would do in a normal type chat window is there. You can click the little A here and you can format it and add a subject. There's lots of options here for you to work with for normal typical chat. So some of the things that are a little bit better with the Teams approach and that started getting rolled out in Skype rolls around, the pinning of contacts that you chat all the time. So, and in making groups. If I want to start a new chat with someone that I haven't had one in the past, I can click the little pencil and paper button here and start typing their name, or I can create groups of people that I'm making chats with. So say I want a chat with Ellie. You see there that I have history there, and Caroline, and our friend Kim. So this is a new conversation, and if I say hi, all three of them are receiving this, and they can participate in a group chat. Now, say I work with this group a lot, and I want to name it something significant, and I'm going to say marketing and CRM. So I'm going to save this, and now I have down here in my recent chats a group name that lets me know immediately who all's in that group and why I might be chatting with them, and I'm going to pin it here to where it's never out of my list of something I can scroll to make it easy for me to communicate with them. So If I attach a file for us and I say, hey, we're working on this and I'd like you to take a look, I can attach either directly from my computer and browse for it like normal, or I can attach directly from OneDrive and it's going to open my OneDrive immediately there in this and allow me to choose files. So I'm going to choose this and I'm going to share it, and it's going to send that as a link to that document. If I attach a document directly, it's going to upload it and include it there. Now, when I click on files, it's going to show me all the files that we've ever shared in this conversation. So chat can also include video. If I click on a video call, anybody that's got a webcam, it will enable us to have very similar to what you're seeing now. If I click on the little telephone icon, it's going to do it as just audio. And there are sharing features, like you're seeing me share my screen now, and you saw the PowerPoint. You can do that with any chat or group chat as well. So that's normal chat. The next thing that you might miss is there's a calls button now as well. So this is going to show you people that you contact frequently, and you can immediately do a call or a video call from here. And you also have the voicemail button, so that if someone did a call and you didn't answer, it would do a voicemail just like for your office phone, an audio voicemail, and this is where you'd retrieve it. All right. So the second type of conversation you would have here are Teams conversations. So every time you create a team, we have one here called, Enable Resource Group, and that's our entire organization. We have that broken down into channels based on the types of discussion. Down here on the Sharing Church, we have that broken down a little bit differently. We have it broken down between here's general info, here's children's ministry info, VBS info. So whatever makes sense for your church to divide it up is what's going to make sense. What we're encouraging people to do now is to create a team for each of your ministries or departments, because that's going to be a way to drive forward with file sharing, with document sharing, with calendars, with all sorts of capabilities that you can do within Teams for each of those units. And then if you need a public forum for your entire church, then create that as its own group to where you could have channels for things like campus-wide announcements or, this week's birthdays, whatever the case may be. When you do that, now in the Sharing Church, if I click on General, you'll see here that this is where I'm going to put generic chatter for the group. Children's ministry is where I'm going to talk about children's ministry in particular, etc. The reason that's important, and the reason you might want to make a team per unit, is when you have access to the team, you have access right now to all of the channels and to all of the files in those channels. So if you're using this as a launch pad for your file access and for your sharing of any sort, you probably want to lock that down to an individual department or ministry. That way, it also gives you the capability to say to the leaders of each department, if you need to change who's a member, go ahead. You can control that yourself. So if I click on these three dots and I click Manage this team, I can go in here and I can change people from owners to regular members, and I can remove them from the team if I choose to. An owner is someone who has a little more rights. They can make changes to the team itself, but any member can edit channels, make new channels, remove channels depending on your settings, and interact with any files that you have saved here. So empowering each department to control that membership can be a really good thing. Another thing that you can do is if I click on add a member, I can invite by email address external users as well, and they would join as a guest. Guests have almost the same rights as members. There's a few things they can't do, but it's safest to consider that a guest can do everything a member can and plan your groups, plan your teams accordingly. If you have one of those, we know this happens all the time in the church world, it's basically an unpaid staff member. They're a volunteer that does more than 3/4 of our working staff. If that person has access to the data and to the team, maybe that's okay, although you should clear that with your standards and policies. But that might not always be the case. So what you might do in that case, instead of inviting an external guest to be a member of one of your normal teams, is have children's ministry external, and that's where you would collaborate with all of your volunteers, just as an example. That way, any new channels, any new files, any of that is not all of your normal departmental data. It's only stuff that you've created for that exact use case. All right, so one of the other, I'm going to jump back to here in just a second, but I also want to go over Calendar. Calendar is where you can see your meetings, and it will show everything on your Outlook calendar, and it will also show anything that's an actual Teams meeting. If I click Meet Now, it opens up a session similar to what you're interacting with now, and then you can invite other people to join in. You can start collaborating, sharing, share a screen, etc. Not a whole lot different, honestly, than starting a group chat. If I do a new meeting, it's going to allow me to schedule out, name it, invite the people, and have it on the books so that people can join later. I can do the same thing from Outlook if I choose to do a new, if I hit this drop down here and I do new Teams meeting, it's the exact same functionality, and I can send that out as an email from Outlook instead of the generic email that it will send. So exact same thing there, as long as I choose to create a new Teams meeting, and that's available in the Mac version or the Windows version. One of the cool things here that you might not think about is every meeting also has the ability for you to share files. So if I go back to a previous meeting and I join that again, obviously I'm not going to do that right now and interrupt my event in progress, but if I join that again, it will open the chats that we had during that meeting and any files that we shared during that meeting. I can do the same thing by typing up here in the search bar, looking for those meetings, and it will take me there as well. So now I'm here and I can see the chat that we had last time and any notes or any documents that we shared. So going back in time is pretty easy. So now that we've seen that, the last thing that I want to talk about that confuses a lot of people is, what does it mean when I'm in a team and I click on files? What is this space? So the short answer is, every team creates a SharePoint site, and because it has a SharePoint site, you can store files on it, just like we talked about earlier. Several of you probably already are using SharePoint to store files. If that's the case, redesigning everything from the ground up might not be the best idea. So instead, what I'm going to do is, on my channel, I'm going to add cloud storage and point this to the SharePoint site I'm already looking at. And what that looks like is what Travis has already done in a past webinar. Sorry, it's on this one. And if I click on this one that he linked, this just opens it as if it's a shortcut, and now I can interact with the files that I have already created in another SharePoint site. So if I go back to the main files tab and I save something outside of that window, it's not going to be available in my original SharePoint site. It's only going to be available within this link, or if I click open in SharePoint. This is why it's incredibly important that you plan out what you want your end result to look like, where you want data to be stored, how you want your staff to use that. It's very important that this is well maintained and well documented, because it can get confusing really quickly. Now, if you've never used Teams or SharePoint to date, we definitely recommend starting with make a team for each department. And when you click on files, there's your files. And if you want to synchronize that down to your desktop so that you don't have to go through Teams every time, then all you have to do is on the Files tab, click on Open in SharePoint. And it's going to take me directly to the back end for that file storage and give me the option, just like I had before, to synchronize that down to my computer. Makes it a lot easier. So we do these a lot. We do migrations from on-site file servers and email into Office 365 from G Suite. By and large, it's a positive experience. You really have to make a good plan. You have to sell your staff on how much easier it's going to make their life for traveling and for collaboration. One thing that Microsoft doesn't have the best answer for right now, if you're in G Suite, is the Google Groups, to where anybody can join an email list with their personal email address. It's a little bit harder to manage, but other than that, they've got a great one-for-one takeaway. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint real quickly and close with a few closing statements. All right, so keep in mind, standards are everything. Making sure that we set those is going to make this a pleasant experience. If you're already using these tools and you're using SharePoint for file storage, using the built-in team storage might be confusing, and be very careful how you use that. If you're a brand new user to SharePoint and Teams, definitely take the Teams approach of, we're going to start with the team, and when you click on files, that's your files. Be aware, we're always ready to help. We've done dozens of these, and we're happy to share our wisdom there and help you out. Be careful with the share with anyone links. Plan, and clearly define your standards. Now, one thing that I promised earlier, just very quickly, that I want to show you before I let Ellie take over, is what went wrong last time. What happens is, when you create a live meeting on your calendar, so I'm going to do a new meeting, and I'm going to choose the type is a new live event. Test. Next, right here. Are only specified people and groups invited, or is it only from our organization, or is it public? Once you start the live meeting, you can't change this because it modifies the link. So that's what went wrong last time. So if you have Teams and if you want to use live events, pay very close attention to what you choose there. So with that, I'll drop back out to Ellie so we can do some Q&A, and thank you guys very much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, James. I learned so much during that. I learned a lot while we were going over the prep for this webinar as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for the time to put all that together and show your screen. Okay, we did have a couple questions, and remember just to keep popping them into the Q&A on the right if any come up. So James, these are kind of out of order based on what you just demoed. You know, we'll go all the way back from the beginning sometimes.
Sure.
So, okay, the first one we got was about the sync tool. Can you set a setting where they automatically download all the files onto your computer?
So when you start your sync and you are choosing which folders you want to sync, if you don't have files on demand enabled, what you choose to sync is going to automatically download to your computer. And anytime you add something to one of those OneDrive folders, yes, it will download a copy of that. With Files on Demand, what it's going to do instead is download, basically an index of those files that you're capable of interacting with. If you ever want to change that, all you have to do is open your OneDrive, right-click, go to Settings, and here where it says, which locations are being synced, you can choose folders, and I can then select which of my OneDrive folders are coming down and synchronizing and which ones are not, which ones are only living in the cloud.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. All right. Next one we have is, with so many different ways of sharing files within OneDrive/SharePoint, what would you say is the best way?
So I hate to say it this way, but honestly, the best way is the way that you're going to remember and do most consistently. So if you synchronize to your desktop or to whatever folders you have, I can share from here. Because this folder is synchronized, I can click share and immediately have the same experience. If I am a person who is always working in documents, everything that I do is either in a Word document or an Excel document, then you might as well use that share button. The great thing about Microsoft and the way that they've designed this is you can share wherever you work. So where you work most is where you should initiate your shares from.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. This next one is about teams as it relates to volunteers or people outside the organization. Mm-hmm. So walk us through again. This is basically kind of reiterating, how does someone interact with teams if they are not a part of your organization, but you need them to get chats and all that? Do they have an app? Do they get notifications? Do they have to remember to log in? That kind of thing.
Yeah, great question. So Teams is a free application, and if you're just joining this webinar anonymously, you can do so without needing an account. If you're going to participate in a team as if you were a church member, then you need to sign up for a free Microsoft account if you don't already have one. And when you do so, then yes, you download the Teams app. It's free for everybody. And once you do that, you log in and it will look exactly like this. And instead of, my face up here, it will be whatever icon you have and the organization that you're a part of. If you are a part of multiples, you can hit that little down arrow and you'll see here that I'm a member of a church's team as a guest. Mm-hmm. So I don't have an account directly on this church, but they've invited me to participate as a guest with my external account. Any Office 365 account or free Microsoft account can be used to sign in to any team that you're invited to participate in. When you do that, you'll be able to participate exactly like you've seen me do with these teams that I belong to. It's just you'll be a guest instead of a staff member of the church.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thanks, James. And then the last question we had, so for a church that has never used Microsoft before, what would be Enable's first step in setting up their OneDrive SharePoint?
The first step in all of these cases is going to be a meeting to plan out what you want the end result to look like. We need to define, where is your email now? Where are your files? How is your staff collaborating with one another right now? And how do we make sure that we replace all of those functions in Office 365 the most effective way possible that's going to be easy for your staff to adopt? The first step is always that planning meeting. Where do you want to end? And how can we show you the best way to get there based on what tools are available?
Great. Awesome. Well, Y'all, thank you all for your questions. And James, thanks for taking the time to prep for this and give us all these awesome pointers and answer all of our questions. So just a reminder, this webinar is recorded, and we're going to post it on our blog along with all the Q&A, so you can have access to that. And then share that link with coworkers that are also interested in this and would want to learn a little bit about it. We want it to be helpful for you guys and your team. And if you weren't able to watch the whole thing, you could always, like I said, find the link, or you're going to get the link and then watch it at a later date. So if we have nothing else, no other housekeeping needs, I think we can conclude this for today. And once again, James, can't thank you enough for showing us all that and getting us going. So thank you so much.
Happy to help. Have a great day, everybody.